So recently, as a part of an art project, I got tasked to design some characters for a story. And since character design is one of the most important things if you want to make a comic or manga, I thought this was a great opportunity to test my skills. But there are two problems. First, these designs are due in about a week, and if I want to keep up with the rest of the project, I need to start ASAP. And two, perhaps the more pressing issue regarding the undertaking of such a task, I suck at designing manga characters. In fact, I'm so bad at character design, you may just think I'm a total beginner. Well, I am. Okay, just to give you a quick overview of what I'm gonna be doing, I need to design two characters, one hero and one villain. The hero is a just blacksmith, and the villain is a corrupt king, who also has snakes coming out of his shoulders. Just go with me on this. Now, this is pretty standard stuff, but I need these designs to actually be decent. This means I need to first brainstorm some stuff about them, like occupation, age, ethnicity, background, physical attributes, etc. Then I need to decide the art style I'm gonna go with. You know, realistic, simplified, fantastical, cartoony. After that, I'll actually come up with the outfit designs, and this includes color schemes, clothes, apparel, and also weapons. And after I've done all of that, I'm just gonna keep repeating it and mix and match all my drawings until I found the best fit. So there is some good news regarding the 1 week deadline I mentioned earlier. I've actually already done some concepts for my first character, and we're just gonna speedrun this bit since I couldn't record this for a reason that I'll explain in a minute. So like I said, he's a blacksmith, so I'm gonna make his weapon a hammer. He's quite young in age, but I want him to seem mature and feel like a leader, because in the story that I'm designing him for, he leads a revolt against the king, which is also my second character. The story is set like in medieval times, so I guess he should have an older style of clothing, and since he's meant to be the hero, a brighter color scheme. So as you can see, I tried a lot of different art styles, which I took directly from other artists and series, so if you think they look similar to something you've seen, it's because they are. Anyway, they all contrast heavily, but obviously they have some of the same elements. I can already tell you the two I will not be going with. First, this one looks way too much like Zoro. I was using Zoro as reference, but I swear I did not trace. But I might as well have, because it looks exactly the same. Second is this Astro Boy one, which was somehow the hardest to draw, and it looks like garbage. If you're wondering why I don't have footage of me drawing these, it's because I had to delete some to make space for the rest of the drawings. I recorded a lot of footage for this video, and a couple of other videos that are coming up, so stay tuned. But yeah, I decided that footage of me drawing the finals was more important than the concepts. So now let's go to the next step, and we can see me actually draw. Now I'm gonna stay true to my word and actually mix the different things I drew and narrow it down from 8 possibilities to 4. Obviously these cutesy looking ones are getting mixed since they're pretty much the same style. The comic one's gonna get mixed with the Zoro one. The Dark Souls inspired one and the black and white one are getting mixed. Then the Invincible inspired one with the Fight Class 3 inspired one, which looks nothing like anything from Fight Class 3. Shout out to Fight Class 3. So the original concept drawing for the comic style one was actually one of my favorites. I don't know, the colors, the pose, the clothing, I just didn't have many problems with it, and I thought it turned out really clean for what's a really difficult art style to do. Turns out the pose might have been helping me a lot with that, because when I tried drawing him standing up, I don't know what happened. It just came out looking so flat. So I kept his overall design the same, mixing some things with the Zoro style one, but mainly just using the same pose. I kept this very jagged, like ripped clothing the same, but I mixed some things. Like for one, I made the front of his cloak or dress or whatever you'd call that open this time, much like a Zoro one, and I also gave him that same like belt thing he wears underneath, which I thought turned out pretty cool. But yeah, his weapon didn't change much. I kept it the same kind of silhouette thing that I had going on before, and everything else was pretty much just done in the same comic style. Which, by the way, this style is so difficult to do. It definitely makes me respect old school comic artists way more now that I've actually tried drawing in that style myself. So yeah, the shadows and lights are like switched, and I noticed that in the references I was using, which was mainly Todd McFarlane's comics that he worked on, he doesn't do a lot of round shapes. It's usually very angular and sharp and like jagged. So I tried to do something similar with his outfit, and I made it look like it's like worn and ripped. And obviously I made sure to make the colored parts green again, because green is kind of symbolic of like heroism and good and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think this turned out too bad, but it's definitely not the best either. But yeah, next we have the Dark Souls inspired one, which is definitely my favorite, and you'll see why by the time I finish this drawing. It's so detailed but so clean at the same time. By the way, to save time on the posing, I decided to draw directly on top of the black and white concept, but in the Dark Souls style, similar to the comic one I just showed you. And yeah, I kept most things the same as the Dark Souls concept from before. I did improve some things and I did mix some things with the black and white drawing. Like, I gave him 2 hammers this time and I made his waistband slightly different. But yeah, I'd say overall it's just an improved version of the Dark Souls concept from before. One thing I really love about this is his hat. I love the way his hat looks. How it's like double layered and it also has those like ornaments kind of hanging off of it. I will definitely use that in a future character design. But yeah, I just love how that turned out, and I tried to do the same thing at the end of his hammer too. But yeah, overall probably my favorite development. I really just can't see many problems with his drawing, even now that I'm looking back at it, which is honestly surprising because I usually hate my drawings. But unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be keeping the hat design from this for the final design because it gives off more East Asian vibes and my story is set in more Central Asia, but everything else I was quite happy with. I also really like the way I did his pants. You can't really see it in this pose, but in the concept it looks quite nice. It's like multi-layered and baggy. Now I need to come clean. I have no clue what happened with the recording for the other 2 developments, so I'm just gonna show them now. I think I either forgot to record or deleted it on accident or purpose, I don't know, but they're not the best drawings, so you really didn't miss out on much. I'm obviously not gonna go with the childish looking one because the other designs are way cooler. The comic one just doesn't look that cool to me and it doesn't fit my story. And as much as I like the style of the Dark Souls one, that is the outfit and the art style, it's just too detailed to replicate for each panel in a manga, and I have to keep that in mind. But I'm also not the biggest fan of the last development either. So what I decided to go with for the final was just to mix and match, again, things from all the developments into one. Okay, so before we go to the final drawings, I thought it'd be a better idea to brainstorm what his outfit might look like before we draw it in any sort of style. So we're just gonna loosely sketch with like big blobs of color. So for the sketching phase, I decided to mix and match details from all the drawings I did, even if I didn't necessarily like them. For example, from the superhero one, I got the idea for his apron that he wears on top of it, like his blacksmith apron. I thought that looked really cool. And I also kept the dark shirt that he wears underneath. From the Dark Souls one, I got the idea for those like really baggy pants that almost look like a skirt. And then I just decided to add some details to make it look more blacksmithy, so I gave him some pockets on his apron. Also, I decided to use pure black in certain areas because keep in mind this is all for a manga, right? So the more simple it is, the easier it's going to be to replicate it in panel after panel. So that was the first one I came up with. The next one, I just decided to see how a cloak would look on top of all of that. I think it turned out pretty nice. I kind of made it like multi-layered, and obviously I made it green because, you know, it's symbolic of heroism, like I said before. The next drawing, I again kept the same base, but I wanted to experiment to see how like bulkier armor would look on top of that. I didn't like it too much, and it kind of covered up the rest of his appearance. I also gave him a bandana just to try it out. That's again from the Zoro concept from before. The one after that, I again kept the base the same, but tried to just improve certain elements. Like under his wrist straps, I added some like leather armor underneath, which I thought turned out pretty clean. And I also made his waistband like a bit baggier. And then just to experiment a bit more, I tried to see how like a hood would look on top of all of that. It wasn't too good, and I think it's a bit unnecessary because it makes him look more like a bandit than a blacksmith. But yeah, out of all of them, I think the first one is still probably the best. But I also like some of the stuff I did to the last one, and I'm still debating the green cloak. So for the final, we already know what style we're gonna go with. Pretty much a mix of the last 2 developments. And we've already come up with how his outfit's gonna look. All that's pretty much left to do now is just to draw him in a bunch of different poses. And obviously I can't be as sloppy with it this time because it's the final design. Also, I decided to keep his cloak but make it something he only sometimes wears. So one of these finals I'll have to draw him with the green cloak on. The first pose is pretty standard. I didn't record it because it's pretty much a trace of the sketch from before. I also drew him from the side just to give a bit of diversity to the poses. But yeah, I decided to keep like the wrist armor. I thought it looked pretty cool and it just gave his design a bit more detail. But yeah, I wanted his overall outfit to just be very baggy, so I kind of exaggerated the shapes a bit. It doesn't even look like he's wearing pants, it looks more like a skirt. But yeah, I think it turned out pretty cool. His hammer is pretty much the exact same it was in the developments, but I decided to both make it more simplified but also add a bit of details by like doing some hatching on the very end of it. And then at the end of the hammer, what I decided to do was make it look like there's these I don't even know what you call them, those things just like hanging off, just to give it a bit more detail and a bit more vibe, you know. His waistband I decided to keep roughly the same as it was in the original. And in terms of coloring, I kept it pretty bland. Obviously I worked in some of that like rustic brown in there because, you know, it gives off more of a blacksmith vibe. And there's nothing too special going on with his face. He does have something, you guys can't really see it from this angle though, but you see more in the next pose. Okay, so for this pose, I decided I wanted it to be another like front-facing angle again. And this is the drawing where we include his green cloak. And yeah, now you can see the face more clearly and you can see what I was talking about. I decided to give him a little like lens or a little goggle on top of one of his eyes. This is because most blacksmiths I saw, and for reference, they always had like a welding mask or goggles, and I wanted something like that. I didn't want it to cover up too much of his face, so I decided to just put it over one eye. I think it's cool. I could have definitely done more with that or made the design look cooler, but I'm fine with it. But yeah, for his green cloak, I kept the design pretty much the same. I did this little sketch of it from before that I'll show you guys. But yeah, I wanted to make it look kind of rough, but also kind of simple as well. I also did this pose off camera. It's an okay drawing, but again, it's just the draw him in a more dynamic pose. All in all, I think this design turned out pretty great. I'm really glad mix and matching works and that I didn't just waste my time. That being said, let's move on to the second character. So for my second character, I decided to skip the whole concept stage since that's mainly just for trying out different art styles. And obviously the art style we're gonna go with is gonna be one that's similar to our other character. That being said, I did still experiment quite a bit with like different proportions and shading styles to see what fit him best. So for this first concept slash development thing, I'm again doing a more comic book inspired one, which again has heavier shadows and like cross hatching, but also has simpler colors in terms of it being more like primary colors. Yeah, I think his cloak turned out really cool. I took inspiration from the Dark Souls inspired one that I did for my first character. I think that's definitely what stands out most about this design. And in terms of his snakes, which should be the focal point when it comes to this design, I'm surprised I didn't do something more unique with them. I definitely regret that, but it's fine. But yeah, I think the heavy shadows and the cross hatching made him look very menacing, which is good because keep in mind he's an evil, corrupt king with snakes coming out of his shoulders, you know? Menacing is kind of a thing we need. Yeah, I also gave him a sword, which you can't really see because it's kind of covered up by his cloak. Yeah, all in all, I think this design turned out pretty okay. I can see some mistakes that I would fix, and I would definitely make his snakes more appealing. No really big complaints. Anyway, this design is probably the most boring, maybe not boring, but it's the most bland. In terms of upper body, he isn't really wearing much, but lower body he does have this pretty cool looking skirt, which I'm actually pretty fond of. Yeah, this design for the snakes is a lot cooler than the last one. They barely even look like snakes at this point. I also decided to give him some fangs of his own to kind of resemble the snake theme. For upper body, even though I didn't give him clothes, I did give him some kind of like apparel or armaments or whatever you call that. And I decided to make it so he doesn't really have a weapon in this design, but he does have these like long, sharp fingernails. And I kept the shading and stuff to a minimum because that was just the style that I was going for. But yeah, this design just doesn't have much else going for it, I'd say. Next, we have probably my favorite, but also the one that has the most problems. You'll see in a bit. First, we have this like pretty cool pose and cool weapon idea. I made it like a scythe that has two blades. I exaggerated his proportions a bit to make him look a lot more slender. I think his hair fully covering his face was a cool touch. And again, he does look very menacing, which is good. Another thing I do like is his snakes, which I made to look a lot more like bloodworms. This is definitely the coolest snake design. But yeah, this design has a lot of problems. For one, he doesn't look like a king at all besides his crown, which is a really important part of his character. Two, as cool as it looks, I am personally lost on the logistics of his cloak. and that's saying a lot considering I'm the one who drew him. And 3, probably the most important one, no matter how much I tried to replicate it for the final design, I just could not draw it again. I don't know if I was going through art block or what. This was just so incredibly hard to try and draw from a different angle. I decided to go with something completely different altogether. So with the design I wanted not working out, I decided to come up with a new one using the development. I thought the red cloak was a good idea because red is also symbolic of like evil, but at the same time it fits a more kingly look. His hair covering his face I was also a fan of, and the black crown looked pretty nice too. I had to come up with a new weapon though because a sword just did not suit him. And again, we have a piss poor performance by me when it comes to recording my drawings. I was about 3/4 done with this drawing when I realized I was meant to record it. I don't even have any excuses for this one. This is just my fault. But yeah, it's not the most unique drawing. It's kind of just all of the previous drawings mixed. His skirt is pretty much taken 1-for-1 from that other drawing. His cloak is pretty much from the comic inspired one, but I changed it a bit so it's not as detailed. His snakes are okay, but they don't look as cool as the previous drawing I did. I did decide to give him bite marks though, as something new, to make it look like the snakes had bit him in the past, which a little bit of creativity from me. And lastly, we have his weapon, which I decided to change from a sword or a scythe or his fingernails to this kind of new staff looking thing. It's kind of like a mirrored scythe now that I really think about it. But yeah, it's the only thing I could think of that fit the sharp theme we were going for, but also felt like a more kingly weapon. I think it's okay. Not too happy with it, but it's alright. I actually ended up finishing this stage of the project on time, which is really uncommon for me. I think the hero design turned out really nice, but I can't say the same about the villain. I just know I can do better, and it annoys me that for whatever reason I failed to. I don't think I did him and the original story this is based on justice with this design. Also, I'm still saying that I designed these characters from scratch, since even though they're based on an already existing story, literally the only things I kept the same were that one's a blacksmith and the other's an evil king. The visual aspect of it was all me. I think even though these designs may have not been perfect, it was definitely really good practice for the future, since I now know how to approach designing characters and clothing, etc. This won't be my last character design video, but I don't think I'll ever repeat this exact same process again. But you guys may be wondering what the project I'm talking about is. All I'm gonna say is that there's a bunch more videos heading your way, so stay tuned if you want to see the manga planning process. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, if you like or dislike the designs, see places I could improve or whatever. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.